Hey. Welcome for another positive talk. Super excited. Hopefully, you all have been having a good day. It is a Monday, the start of the week. I had a hike this past weekend, and my body is still recovering from it. My legs are traumatized and do not love stairs. But I am here for another positive talk, so super excited about that. See if we can get him space as well. We'll be promoting that across our stories as well if you are interested in doing that. Hello.
Hey,
How are you?
good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Dealing with some legs feeling like they aren't meant for walking anymore.
Uh, yeah, I logged in like 1 second ago. Did you go on a hike?
Yeah, we did a pretty good size hike yesterday where it was very cold, so it took a while for my lungs to acclimate to the cold weather. But those hills were like knocking my legs. They were
Yeah,
not enjoying it.
I don't even know how you do it. Like, I exercise, like I work out with weights, but hiking, cardio, or any breathing thing, I do not have stamina at all.
I I was feeling it yesterday. Like you put me on a treadmill, I can go for a while, but the mountain, it's definitely a thing where like it gets me to push myself further than I naturally would at the gym because I have to get back to my car.
Mhm. You don't have a
But
choice. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Once you've walked 5 miles into the wilderness, you have to walk 5 miles back.
Yeah. I know. I don't know the farthest I've gone, but I think it might have been a total of 5 miles, but we'll
It can,
see. Maybe one day I'll get into hiking, but I do fitness in other ways.
yeah. I mean, fitness is fitness.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll let you introduce yourself so people know who you are, and then we can jump into a discussion.
Okay, thank you. So hi everyone, I am Kevin Kassier, and I am a gay life coach. I'm here in Los Angeles, but of course I am on Zoom. So for anyone who is interested in working with me, feel free to message me and we could talk more about that. But of course, you'll see who I am either through my page or through this live. So thank you for hosting this and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I love doing stuff like this with other life coaches because I feel like life coaching in general is still very misunderstood and people don't really know the benefits that a coach can really give
Yeah,
them. So it's kind of fun to do stuff like this with other coaches.
yeah. It was interesting too when I saw your page and your name, Drummond Culture. I was like, wow, what a perfect name. Like it sounds like um a, something on its own, like culture being your last name and Drummond, it sounds just so interesting. So I don't know,
So
I thought that was cool.
cultures actually, my last name is Fulcher, but I
Oh,
did a YouTube event where they were saying you needed to find like a community word to like create community. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool because my name rhymes with
yeah.
culture. So it's funny, I've actually had some people say, so I can't wait to be Mr. Culture. And I'm like, I guess
Yeah.
me too. I'll have to change that.
It's so funny you get those messages because, yeah, as a gay life coach, I think we all get those messages.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know that we kind of wanted to dive into like the LGBT community in general. And I know that when it comes to being a part of any community, there are beautiful things about it. And then there are things that aren't so beautiful. I think that that just goes across any type of community.
Mhm.
There's no such thing as a horrible community, just all in on. I think our community in general has been under attack for quite a while. So it's nice to kind of dive into some of the positives because we've come a long way as a
Mhm.
community. I think we're a beautiful, diverse community compared to some who might not be as diverse. The LGBT, we exist everywhere. There's no
Yeah.
limit to where we can exist. So diving into that, how have you gotten like involved in the community? Because I mean, not everyone dives into the LGBT community and participates there. Some kind of just find a life outside.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting, coming from two gay life coaches, I also want to ask you the same thing right after, because for me personally, I don't push this on all my clients, but for me personally, being more involved in the gay community was by far the most transformative thing for me. Like reducing my shame, reducing like when I look in the mirror and feel unhappy with who I am, not only on the outside, but even on the inside, like looking at myself and being like, oh, I'm disgusting. So it all started with me, I came out and I really wanted like a gay posse. I wanted like a gay group of friends. I didn't have any close gay friends at all. So I ended up going on Grindr many years ago, and I saw this guy who wore really avant-garde queer club kid outfits, like the type they'd wear to like underground crazy parties in the 80s. And I messaged him platonically. I was like, "Hey, your outfit is so cool. I would love to hang out sometime." And he was like being a little flirty, but I was like, "I'm just looking for friends. I just moved to Long Beach at that time." And we hung out. We lived 5 minutes away, so we kept hanging out. He introduced me to his friends. We started going out like to events and bars and things. And being social, being so excited to be in the scene, I was talking to more queer people. And so, I mean, later down the line, me and that friend, we don't really hang out anymore, but I still have met so many people. And still, when I go out, even alone, I'll be like, hey, you again. And they'll all be like, oh my God, yay, good to see you. Um, and of course, that my, like, after being repressed and closeted for so many years, I just really feel so free and open.
Yeah.
And I bring out my full self around other queer people. So I don't think people need that community as much as it helped me. I don't think people need it, but I want to be able to bring that to other gay men, especially, and queer people in general through my life coaching, because that's one thing that worked for me. But of course, there's many, many, many other things I've done to feel so comfortable with who I am today.
Yeah.
So I do want to hear from you too.
Yeah.
Like,
My
how did you delve into the community?
my community experience was a little different at the beginning. I grew up in a more rural conservative area. So when it came to LGBT community, it was harder to find. It wasn't so advertised for you to be able to find them. And my first experience trying to like connect with the community was a little bit more, they were standoffish. They weren't really looking to have a little new Gaby kind of coming into their group. So my first experience, and we've reconnected and like healed that friendship since. But my first experience was kind of like them saying, not really interested. And it kind of put a sour taste in my mouth at first.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I started dating my first boyfriend and he introduced me to like the club. He introduced me to other gay people that he was connected to. And then that's when I kind of formed that relationship with the community. And I was unaware of how many different things I had where I was just doing a lot of self-hate, where the community kind of really helped me open up because I was also brought up in a very religious household.
Mm.
So I had a lot of shame attached to myself when it came to anything, like even talking about sex out loud for me, like my face would turn red, I would start to sweat. I just felt like I was doing something wrong.
Wow.
So like the more I became acclimated with the community and like started making friends where they were kind of helping me through the shame that I was experiencing, I started to like really connect with people. And then I started to learn that not all gay people are the same. You're not going to connect with every single person in the community, and that's okay, because the one thing that makes us similar is that we're part of the LGBT community, but that's not who makes us a person. Our identities are so much more complex than just what community we are part of when it comes to sexual orientation.
Mm-hmm.
So I started connecting with people that did more similar things to me, like camping, hiking, and all of that, where I started to kind of create and form that type of friendship circle. And now I would say like my community is very mixed. It's not just LGBT people. Got a lot of straight friends that kind of are very accepting and are allies that are constantly willing to educate and learn how to be a better ally, which is really nice. And then sometimes it's nice to just be around people, to be a person, and just talk about board games and drinking and having fun, and not really talking about all the activism that goes into being part of our community right now.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many good things you mentioned, but especially you mentioning the part of, finding your own specific part of the community. That's one thing I think a lot of people have this idea that the gay community at large is very superficial, party, exclusive, all this stuff. And that might be what we see in TV shows and on social media, because, those people are probably going for as many followers as they can. But the fact of the matter is, just like you also said, we're all varied people. There are gay guys who want to just stay at home and play board games or play video games all day. So, like, or even, other things, hiking, sports, even. Like, there really are parts of the community for everyone. And that's why I really hope that people who do have this sour taste in their mouth could do the same thing you did of trying once again, because they'll be able to find people that have their shared interests, just like the friends they have now. But once they have that added layer of growing up in a similar way, having the same feelings, it could reduce a lot of the shame related to talking about sexuality or the things they feel when they think a certain thing, and being able to realize, like, they're not some freak in this world.
Yeah.
There are other people who feel the same way and have these regular interests just like them.
Yeah. I've done a lot of different seminars where I've worked with coaches on grander schemes of things where it was just not an LGBT themed area, where discussions weren't bringing up the added stresses of being part of a community that is constantly being attacked or shamed or put down by laws the government's putting out. Like, when people in the straight community discuss like life coaching stuff, they kind of jump over some of the traumas that a lot of people in our community first have to heal before they can even start a journey of living their best life. Because there have definitely been people I've worked with where you see the baggage that they're carrying within their traumas, and a community where pretty much all of us have faced some type of trauma one way or another, whether it's by family members, whether it's by significant others, whether it's by the community itself. We've all got different traumas that I think are very important for us to realize needs to be healed and worked on and understood, and not just swept under the rug and pretend like it's not there, because it will only eventually come back up and haunt us and create problems in our future.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned too, being really religious. What religion is your family?
Yeah, I was brought up with like the Southern Baptist Christian household, so like the very, very strong Christian beliefs.
Yeah.
And it definitely, like, even to this day, I'm still unpacking. Like, each new level that I grow to in life unpacks new traumas that childhood brought. So it's just like understanding that and not allowing that to negatively impact my future while I'm on the process of healing that.
Yeah. I'm like bookmarking so many things you're saying, because you're saying so many good things. But with me, my family's Iraqi and they're actually Catholic. A lot of people think like every Middle Eastern person's Muslim. But my family, my immediate family, is actually, kind of, how do you say, medium religious. Like, they go to Christmas mass and that's it. Thankfully, I don't think my shame came from my immediate family. I actually think it came from the media. Like, even when I was a kid, just hearing all the things of like how gay people it's bad, it's wrong, in God we trust, but then we're wrong in God's eyes. So it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And actually, a couple of years ago, I read the Bible, even though I've been atheist for like most of my life at this point. But I read the Bible a couple of years ago because I wanted to see, like, where does it say that being gay is wrong and we should hate on other people? And it really doesn't say all of that. It just says, like, love your neighbor as you love yourself, do not judge, or you too will be judged. So it also says, like, if you speak on behalf of God like a prophet, that's like one of the worst sins. So all these people saying they know who God hates, did unless he told you that, they're making something up, and that's not right. But in the end, it's just interesting to know, like, do you think that your shame came more from within your family itself?
I grew up being a child that had gone through being molested by someone in my family. So there were definitely times where like things in church were said and it instantly triggered my attention to I'm going to hell for this. So
Hmm.
like my brain from a very early time was just like I'm disgusting, I'm going to hell. Before I even knew what gay was, just because of that happening in my life, to where I even, when I started to realize what gay was, I went through the whole process of, was this because of what happened to me as a child? Is that why I'm gay now? Because that's one of the stereotypes out there is that you've got the overbearing mother, the absent father, has dealt with being molested or traumatized sexually as a child.
Hmm.
And I was just like checking off all those things. And I was just like, maybe that's what made me gay. And it wasn't until I started becoming part of the community and I was meeting people who had none of those things on their checklist. And it's like, okay, maybe we were born this way. Maybe it had a little bit to do with nurture, but we all have so many diverse, different stories to where we are. And I was just like, no, you don't have to have all those checklists to be gay. It's very possible you can just be gay and have been born that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and people do say a lot of those things that aren't true because, I mean, for me personally, I can't imagine someone choosing to be gay and pretending to be gay. So the thought of like one thing in our life changing it, it's just hard for me to believe something that seems so biological, like when we look at something, how it makes us feel and stuff like that. But just like you mentioned, those stereotypes, it could be tough. And especially for what happened to you, the fact that it's not something that was in your control, but you were already feeling like you're going to hell for it. It's just, it's really unfortunate that you're not the only one that has gone through that and will continue to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that being something that happens in the church a lot as well. It's like, it's just this whole backwards, they call us perverts, but that in itself is a perverted thing of trying to say something that's disgusting that they impose on people. So yeah, it's for me, if you mentioning the stereotypes, I've always been gay and I've always known it since I was like probably 3. But one fear that I had, which led me to reading the Bible, because I had a panic attack thinking that like the devil was going to kill me. This long story, but I realized that some insecurities I had that night were I used to always have this fear that my girlfriends, my platonic girlfriends, would think that one day I was lying to them about being gay and that I was gonna like secretly be a predator to them, when they drop their guard. Or I had this fear that people would just think I'm some like pervert that if they give me a chance or a moment, they'll walk in the room and I'll be doing something completely obscene, you know? Um, and those are all, stereotypical false gay beliefs that being gay isn't real. It's just guys who like can't get a girl, so they try to like lower their guard, or that gay people are these like hypersexual, the only thing they think about is stuff like that. Like, even though sexuality is a large part of the community, it's not like we're wild animals that can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And also, usually I feel like if we compare us to the non-queer people, who are the people we hear about in the news that do have assault allegations?
Yeah.
It's usually not people who have had to put in a lot of effort to accept their own sexuality.
Yeah. I mean, when you were talking about a fear of people assuming that you're a predator, my nephew, he is 6 years old, and my sister taught him to like give her kisses on the lips. So like he like when he shows love, he just kisses on the lip. And when I was in public, like that was a huge fear for me that my sister didn't understand, like, because he would want to give me a kiss to say that he loved me. And I was just like, that can absolutely not happen. As a gay person living in a rural area, like I never hid my sexuality since I've come out. So people very much know that I'm gay. Sometimes people who don't know me might see me with my nephew thinking he's my child. But like, that's a fear that I had, that they thought, oh, this person might be grooming this child to think a certain way, when all I want to do is make sure that my nephew grows up with an open mind, knowing that me being gay and me having a boyfriend, and my other sister being a lesbian and her having a girlfriend, isn't wrong compared to his mom having a boyfriend or a husband. And when it came to what society may assume and what people would do if they see a little boy kissing a gay person, I was just like, this traumatized me of like, oh my gosh, I have to be even more cautious now in public spaces. Whereas like if someone saw a little boy kissing their dad on the lips, they're just like, oh, that's so cute.
Mm-hmm.
But when it happens to a gay guy, it becomes he's a predator grooming a child. And I was just like, this is another trauma response that I'm having to deal with as a gay person, because society automatically identifies us as people who are trying to do that to children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's, once again, it just goes back to who's usually the ones grooming. And it's, of course, I'm sure there are people of any, type who do that, but most of the time we hear about it and it's not queer people. But what you mentioned is true. Like, I would say the same thing if I had a similar situation. I would say, oh, we're not going to do this, even if that is how you usually show love to your mom or your dad. With me, I'm your uncle. It's different with me.
Yeah.
Um, One thing I want to know is, because for me, I grew up in Vacaville. It's in Northern California.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a hometown, but it's still, I think it voted blue liberally. And then I've been in LA for like 9 years now. I can't imagine, even in my hometown, which is pretty open, I can't imagine being as out and comfortable. So for you, being in a rural area, I absolutely can't imagine like being
Yeah.
how I am there. So how did you do that?
So I moved away for quite a while. I was in Chicago for a little bit, Pittsburgh for a little bit, down in Florida for a little bit.
Mhm.
So I was in some bigger cities when it came to the process of me learning to accept myself. When I came back, that's when I started to realize like the community in those spaces are very different than in areas where it's more accepted. Uh, they develop a whole new persona. I was telling people how a lot of times the gay community in these rural areas will even speak poorly of the gay community as a whole to be accepted by the conservative people.
Mhm.
And I think it's really sad to see that, because they're really missing out on being celebrated versus tolerated. And that's a huge thing. And I've even talked to like my friend who we lived in very similar areas, and then he moved to New York City, and then I moved back to Virginia. And to see him grow into a space where he just learned self-love, self-acceptance, self-celebration, versus me, where I kind of learned to be strong and proud in who I am. But for me, I spent most of my time fighting for the right to exist instead of being in a space where I felt celebrated at any point in time. So I
Mhm.
think that that is a huge difference when it comes to being in spaces. Knowing, like, if you've never left a rural area and you're gay, I will tell you, you really don't know what it feels like to be celebrated or treated as if you are no different than anyone else. Like living in a rural area, I am always introduced as, oh, this is my gay friend.
Mm.
Like it's always attached to that. But when I lived in the city, they're like, oh, this is my friend Drummond. Oh, this is his boyfriend or his partner. And it was very different when I moved back, when it seemed like everyone that talked to me felt like they needed to talk to me about gay stuff.
Mm.
And it was just a very different feeling than living in a city where everyone's very diverse and accepting of the diverseness in the community. Whereas, like, in the rural areas, they point out the differences very quickly and discuss that as if it's the only thing you have the ability to discuss.
Hmm. So, it's interesting hearing that. Like, so after you moved back, how did you not like put yourself back in the closet?
I think it was just because I was so proud of who I became. Like the weight was lifted off my shoulders. Like it was the world lifted off of my shoulders after I was able to just be myself. And I was not willing to put that weight back on because that would really prevent me from doing what I really enjoyed doing.
Hmm.
And I mean, there are definitely times where I feel like I'm playing educator or advocate all the time for people around me. Like even people who are my friends will say things that sound very ignorant, and I feel like I'm like, okay, I am a strong person who my self-love is up here, and your comment that sounds very ignorant doesn't negatively impact my day. But for another gay kid in this community that does not get acceptance or celebration on a regular basis, that's a very toxic conversation that you just had.
Hmm.
Here's how to fix it. So I think that it's important for LGBT people to exist in those spaces, but you definitely have to build up yourself to the point where all the things being said out of ignorance or out of hate don't knock you down.
Yeah.
And I've definitely had to reconnect with my friends from the cities and keep continuing like the flow of positive towards me so that I can stand tall still in the areas where it's not so easy.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it's like I know that it has to continue to happen. Otherwise, these rural areas will never learn and never grow, and it'll always be a dangerous place for LGBT youth to exist in.
Yeah. That's one thing I think people kind of forget is like I even made a video recently about that. Like I want us always to remember like how it was in the 80s or even beforehand. Like I mentioned the 80s because of the HIV epidemic.
Mhm.
I have no idea how it would feel to be out during that time, not only living in fear that you could get this unknown virus at the time, but also that people think you are like a cause of it. And even if you don't have it, they would imagine it. It's just all these things that I haven't had to worry about, but I think of constantly whenever I think of, oh, I feel uncomfortable about this right now, or should I do this? Should I speak up in this moment? I just think of, it was so much harder for people before, so I should do it too. And it's interesting what you mentioned of like pretty much the statement you say to people that say hateful things. I also say something of like sometimes people will ask me things directly. Like I feel like people are always interested in your position. Like non-gay people are like, so how does sex work? How does this happen? Or they'll just ask whatever questions they want to. And if there is like some hint of bias in there, like being like, oh, do you think it's like okay for them to do this? Then I'll say something like, like I do think it's okay for people to do whatever as long as they're not hurting people. This statement you said, if it was something that was hateful or hurtful, I'll say the statement you said is something you want to keep in mind because, I'm not worried. I know who I am, but there are people out there who might end their life because of hearing things that you say.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind that some little statement you say, it's a big deal to people who are really doubting that they should be alive.
Yeah.
So I kind of get really dramatic
Yeah.
because I want these people to know that for some people it is a life or death issue,
Yeah.
and it's it's a bigger deal than people think. Like all these drag bans and stuff. I don't even do drag, but I can't imagine how it would feel to be trans right now when they're saying they want to eradicate trans people.
Yeah.
Like haven't we gone through things in history before when we're talking about eradicating groups of people and we all agree that's wrong? It just sounds really, really barbaric. Um, but
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of things. I'm glad that people like us as gay life coaches, we do have a platform, and yes, we appeal to gay and queer people, which is amazing. But I also want non-queer people to see too that us sharing our lives and sharing our experiences is showing that we are dimensional people just like them. And our sexuality, even though I have this huge flag right behind me, our sexuality is just one part of who we are as people.
Yeah. Usually when people start asking questions that I feel like are inappropriate questions to ask, I quickly flip it to, would you be asking this question if it was two Black people? Like,
Mm.
would you say, so how do Black people have sex?
Yeah.
Like, you coming up to a queer person and talking to us as if like we are some science experiment that you want to know more about, like flip the question and ask it of any other minority group. And does that sound weird to be asking? Because a lot of times, because what forms our community is our sexual identities, people assume that we are just so open to talking about sex.
Hmm.
And me personally, if you are a stranger that I have no relationship with, just because you found out that I'm gay does not mean I want to talk to you about my sex life.
Hmm.
Uh, it does not open the door and say that I have to talk to you about it. And sometimes it surprises people when I kind of come back with that type of response. But I'm like, yes, I choose to have conversations and educate people, but like, I'm not a National Geographic show for you to watch and gawk at when it comes to my personal privacy.
Hmm.
And I think that a lot of people don't realize that, like, yes, I will go on live and talk about it. Yes, I'll have those conversations with people who are clients or people who are interested, but it's also not appropriate to just walk up to a stranger and ask those types of questions, because like that is something that's depends on the person, could be very offensive.
Yeah. And I think even that, it seems so innocent, but I do think it is stemming from this idea that we are kind of less than and that everything about us is like open to other people. So, for example, even if I were to ask a woman, like, what did you do the night you conceived your child? You know, that
Yeah.
would be so inappropriate. But them asking gay people that, I think, is this idea that, like, oh, they're less than me, so I deserve to know. Because it's not like they should be private anyway. You would never ask your boss that question. You'd never ask people that question, really, unless you, I don't know, just see it just like you said, like you're gawking or it's some show or performance.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like something that other people could relate to is like when people walk up to Black women and ask to touch their
Mm,
hair, like it's like you're petting an animal. And I think that that's like the same level of like, don't do that.
yeah.
Like you don't walk up to a stranger and go, oh, can I touch your hair?
Hmm.
Just like you don't walk up to a gay couple and go, how do you guys have sex? Like
Yeah.
I was asked once, like, how do gay people breed? As if we were like an animal species that needed to breed
Yeah.
to remain in existence. And I was just like, that's really offensive and not appropriate to be asking at this time.
Yeah. I can't believe someone would say that. But yeah, like it's interesting, my brother, talking about like black culture and black people, my brother, who is older than me, he has always been attracted to black women. And this was back in like the 2000s when being thick and all that stuff was not considered the hot thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because I was young, but I was around his friends and they would make fun of him for who he was attracted to. They'd be like, "Oh, I can't believe you're into black girls. Like they look like this, they look like that. Like what?" And back then, I knew I was gay and I kind of related it to that. I was like, "I can't believe that people are hating on him for being attracted to women. Like, shouldn't
Yeah.
they hate on me for being attracted to men?" But then as years went on, he always stood by. He was like, "That's who I'm into, and they're gorgeous, like I don't know what you're talking about." And then as years went by, then like black features became more prevalent in modeling, stuff like that, having bigger lips, a more curvy body. And then all the friends who were hating on them before now started to like be interested in them. So a lot of people, I think, just they for any type of group of person that's different from them, whether it's sexuality, ethnicity, religion, or many things, if I think if they don't know people in that group, they feel this dehumanization of them where they're just not the same.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think that being in a place, for example, Los Angeles or California especially, it is great to be able to be around such a variety of people because then we could all benefit from it. Like my best friend, she's a black girl. She, we talk almost about like me coming out and her coming out because she used to try to pretend to be white all the time. And then I used to, of course, pretend to be straight. So there's all these things that we deal with specifically as gay people, but other people deal with in their own way. And we could all relate and find this connection if we just aren't blinded by hate.
Yep. I think that when it comes to pretty much anything, when it comes to other people's experiences, we just have to realize that just because it's not our experience doesn't mean that what they're telling us is invalid.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we all have to just accept that differences have never been celebrated, which I think is sad. I think that if we could get better at seeing differences as things worth celebrating, we would start to kind of live in a better world. I mean, if you think about like the history that we're taught as children, like we're always taught about the other people. And when you other people like that, of course, you start to think others are different, others are bad, others should not exist. There are superior groups and you're a part of that because that's the mindset they teach you. And I always tell people, like, when the Pulse nightclub happened, like, did you feel unsafe? And a lot of straight people are like, no. I'm like, why not? We're all humans. That could have happened to anyone. But it was because it was such a direct attack to the LGBT community. You know, everyone in the LGBT community felt that. And that's the same with a lot of the other like shootings and killings that have happened between different minority groups. They feel that intense impact of that could have been me. And it just sends chills up my spine. And every time like I ask people, I'm like, so when George Floyd was murdered, did that impact you? Did you feel threatened and unsafe? And a lot of people are like, well, not really. And I'm like, that was a person. Like, how can you not relate to the fact that this is a person whose life was taken from them? And it's because we've trained everyone's brains to disconnect themselves from people who are different than them, to the point where your brain naturally puts yourself higher than other people. And I think that that's where the danger happens, because anytime you feel like you're not a part of another human being's like existence, it makes you feel superior, or those people are lesser than you. And that is not good for anyone.
Yeah, with all these hardships and stuff, you know, even this thing being called positive talk, I love how positive and, you know, growth oriented you are, which I feel like as a life coach, to me, that's like a basic fundamental thing. But do you think there is something that led you to being positive? Because it's so easy to be negative.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely days where like negativity take control and I can feel myself going down that spiral. Nothing good has ever come out of going down that spiral. Until something flips or till you hit rock bottom, and then you start to make the effort to go in the positive direction. Like, it's not toxic positivity to see opportunities that exist around you. I think that it's easy to flip anything. Like, people always challenge me when I say like anything can be flipped positive, and they're like, oh yeah, tell me how death is positive. And I'm like, well, the people existed in this world and they gave to this world, and what they gave positively could have impacted other people.
Hmm.
Like, I've had friends who have passed away, I've had friends who've killed themselves, I've lost family members. And what I look at when I look at that situation is like, what did they give me to carry on to the future? And I think that that's where positivity, brighter futures come from, is being able to look at something that technically everything has neutral like energy, and you get to choose whether or not you give it a positive or a negative. Because my grandfather passing away was really painful for me, but people who didn't know him didn't feel anything because the event happened and they never had any connection to him.
Hmm.
So I can choose to have a negative experience or a positive one, but technically the event was neutral in the beginning.
Yeah.
And choosing to see the wisdom he passed down to me is wisdom I can now share with the world, is a positive way to look at that.
Yeah. I love that example because, death is something a lot of people view as just negative and a time to mourn and be sad. But I also, just like you said, think pretty much everything there could be some positive to it. Like the worst times we've had, we could think of something that it led us to that was good. So, for example, if we do hit rock bottom, we might be like, I never want to feel this way again. So I am going to do this. Or someone who was addicted to something and feels like they wasted years of their life. Once again, they could realize maybe that could have happened many years down the line. Maybe it happened in their 20s when it could have happened in their 40s. So all they have to do is realize that the positive is they know what they shouldn't do again. They've learned some experiences of how to maybe enjoy life because they felt it with some other substance. So they know it's possible to feel that way, and maybe they could try to do that without any substances. I also, talking about death itself, my mom, who's still alive, she is very hippie like. She came from Iraq in the middle of like middle school, and she's almost 60, but she talks very openly about death to me. She's healthy, but she's like, you know what, you never know what will happen, so just cremate me when that happens and you could spread me over a tree. And I was just listening, and she's like, I didn't want to tell like your dad more. She's like, when I mentioned it to him, he says he doesn't want to hear it. But she's like, this happens to all of us. Like I want you guys to know what to do so that when it happens, you're not wasting all this money on a coffin because I don't care about that, you know? And it was so interesting that she brought it up to me, and she's told other people too, but it was just interesting that she was talking about it so candidly. And I think some people might feel this need to be like, no, please don't talk about that. Don't. Just like she said, that's what my dad told her. But the fact is, it's just another topic.
Yeah.
It's just another conversation topic. And she's not talking about it in a positive or negative way. She's just talking about it as something to check off a list.
Yeah.
And I think that her, what do you say? Her neutrality to it is positive in itself, because that is something that's so easy to let bring you down, this fear of trying to like hold on to life. I'm not even Buddhist, but I know this idea that um, like you get reincarnated if you have more things you need to complete,
Yeah.
but then when you don't, you just end it. Honestly, that's what I want. I, you know, whenever my life is over, I hope everything is complete, and that's that. And I will be happy with that. I
Yeah.
don't need to redo things. I don't need to go back and come out at a younger age. I don't need to do all these things, the shoulds. Like, there's no should in life. It's just what happens is what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I learned that holding on to the fear of death only like makes it harder to live. So when it came to talking about death, I'm like, well, eventually I'll die. I hope it's a quick death. But
Yeah.
other than that, it's like I really don't have control over that. Like, no one can stop death. So there's no point in trying to put any stress or focus on it other than like, hey, once I'm gone, I want you all to continue to live because I lived,
Mhm.
and I want you all to live as well. And I think that when people attach such a negative idea of death, it's like we're all approaching it. Like some of us will get there way faster than others, depending on where our journeys take us. But I think that if you spend your whole life fearing death, you're only going to waste perfect time to celebrate life. And I think that the more people who can kind of generate that mindset and kind of go through life, it's just like coming out, like
Mhm.
lifting that weight off of your shoulders. It's so much easier to get through each day when you're not worried about death every
Yeah.
single second.
Yeah, just like you mentioned, I am afraid of like pain, like physical pain. Um, so I actually went to a physical therapist a few years ago because I was having like intense shoulder pain. They just told me it was like posture and stuff like that. But ever since then, I've been really focusing on my health, like eating correctly, working out correctly, because all of these things were from doing things incorrectly, sleeping incorrectly, all that's what my physical therapist said. And doing all of that has really helped me like feel less afraid of living in pain in the future.
Yeah.
So it's something that I think that if we do fear something, there's something that could be done. The one fear I have that I don't know how to work on is my fear of like needles. I faint whenever it happens. I actually went to get acupuncture to try to do like exposure therapy. And I did end up fainting while getting acupuncture, and I went back. I went back like three more times. But I still, if I start to think about like getting my blood drawn, I could like even in this moment start to like lose color in my face and almost faint. Like I guess maybe it's a phobia at this point, but I've gotten it. I've gotten my blood drawn because I've had to. But I don't know, like so many. So I don't know. I'll just get off that topic for the sake of my own
Yeah, don't faint on the line.
consciousness. But yeah, when it comes to, being a life coach and working on things, what do you feel like is the thing that led you to do that? Like led you to being able to like really take charge of your life and your positivity and your mindset?
I think for me, the drive to be a coach is I know what it was like to live in the very dark space in my mind where I allowed a lot of external to control the outcome of my life. And when I took control of it, when I learned how important mindset was, and when I saw the drastic difference in how I was able to live my life free from a negative mindset, it's not a selfish thing. I just want everyone to know what that feels like to break through that wall, because I think that all the bad things that are happening in the world are because people are trapped in a mindset that does not celebrate life and celebrate others and the beauty that this world offers. Because when you think about it, people who are happy, people who are living the best life that they could possibly live, would not waste a second of their life trying to negatively impact someone else's life. I think that when you see negative in this world, when you see hate, like you have to look at those people and wonder how much self-hate they exist in, because no one on this planet who is just happy and know how to live life freely would ever waste a moment doing anything other than just living and sharing that wisdom with other people.
Hmm. I feel the exact same way, especially being online with hate comments and stuff like that. I I've always I spend a lot of time on YouTube, like personally on YouTube. And in the comments, there's hate comments on videos and people would be like, "Why are you even watching this video if you hate it?" And it is so interesting to me, like I don't go on YouTube and watch people I dislike. Like, and if I did, I wouldn't comment something being like, I hate your music, you don't stand a chance to Madonna. Like, I would never do something like that. So whenever people do that, it always just makes me think like, why did why did they intentionally take time out of their day and put effort into spreading this hate, because it doesn't happen automatically. It takes effort. It takes, it's probably a habit. If they've done it once, they've probably done it before, and they'll probably continue to do it unless they decide on changing it. But there's a lot of other more productive things they could do for themselves rather than spread hate to other people. But I guess they'll just have to figure that out for their self, you
Yeah.
know. In the end, I don't need to defend me or my favorite K-pop artist,
Yeah.
but these people who are spreading those comments, really, in the end, they are just pulling away from themselves to try to pull away from someone else too.
Yeah.
And
I mean, thinking of like times where I've said hateful things about other people, if you really dig down deep and look at, okay, why am I saying this? A lot of times it's because you feel like you lack something that someone else has, or you're jealous of the attention someone else is getting. Like, I can probably go back and think, okay, I said something negative about this person because I wish I was getting the positive attention that these people were getting that I don't get because of this, that, or the other.
Mhm.
And being able to see my own self-hate as a space that I need healing, it made me realize, like, hey, there are some things that are still triggering to me that trigger me being angry for no reason at someone who is undeserving of that anger. And those are the times where I'm just like, okay, how do I heal myself in this
Mhm.
moment? Because this person does not deserve this comment that's coming out of my mouth. And I've caught myself saying something hateful and then looked around at people's faces because I'm usually pretty observant. And it's not a pretty picture when you look at how like put down someone is by the fact that you just said something like that. Like, you never know the comment that you're saying to this person over here and how the person right here hearing it is translating that into their own self-hate.
Mm.
Because there have been several times where I've had someone sitting beside me who said something hateful, and I knew that the person beside me on the other side struggled with that. An example is like I was dating someone who was very anti-abortion, and
Mm.
he was very vocal about how disgusting he thought women were that had abortions. And then my other friend sitting right beside me a year before had an abortion. He didn't know that, but I did, and I saw the pain in her. So I started to realize, like, when you say stuff like that in any room with other people listening, you never know how that will negatively impact someone's like self, like love.
Mhm.
So I tried really hard. I hope people know around me to call me out for it, but I think it's important for people to realize you never know what a comment like that can do to people that you love around you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, thankfully, I think for me, like hate doesn't come too naturally from me. And I think a lot of this is habits. Just like you said, I for sure remember middle school, there was a guy that I hated because he was so popular and I wish I was him. I was attracted to him. And I would try to like always talk about him and tell people bad things about him. And really, it's just because I wanted to like bring him down, thinking that I would be brought up. But the thing is, it's not like a pecking order where I'm next in line.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone brings someone else down, it's not like that person's going to be brought up. Usually that person's brought down too,
Yeah.
because they're like, oh, maybe they will change their mind about that popular or other person. But then also the person who spread the hate, people aren't going to be like, thank you so much. Like they're usually going to be like, well, that's a very negative person too. So I just won't really associate with either of those people.
Yeah. I always tell people, like, you can have the tallest tower by either destroying everyone else's or working on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you can, if you spend all your time destroying everyone else's, yours isn't really being built. It's just existing and it's taller because you've just destroyed everyone else's.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, if you work on yourself, if you promote yourself in a positive way, If you give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and instead of assuming malice or negative intent about people around you, people see that and people are attracted to that type of person. And that's why a lot of times we see people living their best life and we are like, man, we want that. And a lot of times we think to get it, somehow we have to take it from other people, but it's more about figuring out who your best self can be and like living that life. But not everyone can kind of see it that way because we're once again taught by society to look outward for the things that we need, when in all actuality most of the things you need, pretty much almost everything you need, is within yourself, if you're willing to kind of take that journey inward.
Yeah, it goes back to something you said earlier. I am going to post this video today of pretty much how internalized homophobia is what causes other gay people to say hateful comments about other gay people as well, you know? And I think that idea of that hate within the group is what makes other people think it's okay. So you mentioned that at some part, and it was so perfect. So look out for that video later tonight. But it is such a thing where, you know, trying to tear down everyone's tower, it takes so much more work to do that than to build one tower. Think of all the towers in a city. How much work, how much money, how much time would it cost compared to just
working on
building one on your own?
Yeah. And I think that a lot of times the other communities that attack a community that is different, the reason why they're attacking the LGBT community is because we're a community where self-expression is accepted, where our differences are celebrated. And a lot of times people in other communities are living to their stereotypes. Like straight people, they're supposed to get married by a certain age and they're supposed to have a certain income and you're supposed to act a certain way. You should be going to church every Sunday. They have so many things that they feel like they have to do because society taught them that that's what they have to do, that they look at a community where we're not doing any of those things and they still see us living with joy and happiness. And that puts that like jealousy in them where they feel like they have to tear our towers down to make themselves feel better. But at the end of the day, your tower doesn't grow anymore. You don't have any more joy in your life for tearing and destroying other people's lives. You actually are creating the opposite because now people are looking at you as someone who, instead of building yourself, you're a destroyer. And that's what people see. And that's what you start to, and then they'll blame the community that they attacked for the outcome that they are living in. But in all actuality, their actions are what brought the life to existence that they're living now.
Yeah.
But I see that we're close to the end, and the other day,
I know. That's why I was like, I
off.
don't think I should bring up another topic.
But I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope we can do another one because this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you, Drummond. I totally loved it too. And I would absolutely love to do this again. So thank you so much for being willing to do this. I really enjoyed it. And I just really love, just like how we're talking about supporting other people, I really love the fact that you are also a gay life coach and you're willing to put me on your platform. I think that's so generous. And this is like the 5th time I've said it in this sentence, but like once again, thank you so much.
No problem. I think that at the end of the day, there will be people who align with me as a person and will get a lot from working with me as a coach. But there are so many people out there that would align with someone else on this planet better. And my end goal is for people to find someone that can help them live the best life. And if you can do that for them, gosh, I would love them to do that, because at the end of the day, I just want people to be able to live the best life.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. That's why, you know, soon enough, I'm going to be doing the same thing for other gay life coaches, being like, hey, you know, I notice you're just starting out, or I notice you're in this other place. Let's do something together. So, yeah, and I want to give a quick shout out to Michael in the chat too. Thank you, Michael, for being so engaged.
Awesome. Well, I will talk to you soon and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too, Drummond. Bye-bye.
Bye.